Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video. Hey, what is going on guys, Danny here, welcome back to the channel and I hope you've all been doing well. This is going to be a pretty interesting and fun video because I'll be telling you guys about my experience building in the Thermaltake View 51 case and also giving my thoughts on the Thermaltake TH360 Snow Edition AIO. So for the past 4 years I've been using the Corsair Air 740. I started using this case for my personal rig ever since jumping ship to AMD's Ryzen platform back in 2017 with the R7 1800X build. The Air 740 has served me well these past few years. It provided excellent airflow, has a lot of space to work in, and being dual chambered, cable management was a breeze. Now I'm someone who's always standing behind performance over aesthetics, but that's not to say I don't want something that looks decent. In 2019, when Lian Li came out with the O11 Dynamic, it unquestionably caught my attention because it provided the same sort of benefits and features as my Air 740, but looked much more elegantly pleasing and modern. I gotta admit, the Air 740 doesn't necessarily turn heads in the looks department, that's for sure, and its overall appearance can be confused for a microwave, if I'm being honest here. So over the past year or so, I had been on the lookout for some deals on a worthy upgrade, but as I had mentioned before, I wanted something that provided good airflow and was dual chambered because once you go dual chambered, you can never go back. That's where the Thermaltake's View 51 case caught my eye. Right off the bat, I know what you're all going to say. Thermaltake pretty much just copied Lian Li's O11 Dynamic XL here, and you'd be right. However, they have made some differences and improvements with their version, which suited my preferences better. Now, don't think of this video as a review of this case, or the TH360 AIO for that matter. This is just more of an overview because I'm not going to be comparing these products to any other similar products, nor am I doing any sort of standardized thermal testing. I'll definitely share my thermal results, but don't expect any comparisons here as I don't have a plethora of cases and AIOs. Also, this video isn't sponsored by Thermaltake or anything like that. I just happen to find these parts on a decent deal, and I have used a couple of their AIOs in the past, which have worked out quite well for me. Also, all of the fans and parts I used in this video will be linked in the video description, so if you're interested in picking up this case or the AIO for yourself, then you'll want to check those out. What's funny is that I ordered the black version of this case from Amazon, and what I ended up getting was the white version, but this is a mistake I am totally cool with because I actually wanted the white version originally, but it was like $100 more expensive for some reason, which I thought just wasn't worth the extra premium, but for the same price, hey, I'll take it. Now, this is a very large case, and it's also very heavy. Just by itself, it weighs just under 33 pounds, it stands 55 centimeters tall, is 31.5 centimeters wide, and is 52.5 centimeters long. Needless to say, if you're someone who moves their case around a lot and you're going to be looking around for portability, then look elsewhere as this thing is definitely not what I'd call portable. The View 51 case comes with a very large tempered glass side panel, which provides a lot of visibility for your components inside. So if you're going for a certain theme or you want to show off lighting effects and your components, you'll be able to do that quite easily. The side panel can also be removed easily since it uses a hinged door-like mechanism and is held in by magnets, which has a latch on the other side to lock it in place. I like this implementation as opposed to 4 thumb screws in the corners. The front and top panels are also covered with more glass. Again, emphasizing this case is meant to be used in a manner where you're going to be showing off your components. Now, although the front and top panels have glass, that might raise concern for obstruction of airflow. However, the glass panels do have these gaps which are about 3/4 of an inch in length, to allow for air to move in and out more freely. I personally would have preferred mesh panels, but this is fine too, and it looks much cleaner if you ask me. The panels also come off very easily, which was surprising considering how bulky this case is, but the top panel was held in by a couple of thumb screws, and then once they're removed, it just slides off, and then you can lift off the front panel. As for the I/O, you have a Type-C port, 2 USB 3.0 ports, 2 USB 2.0s, microphone and headphone jacks, so there's a lot of connectivity options available here. The case comes with 2 pre-installed giant 200mm fans in the front and one 120mm fan on the back, which are all ARGB, so you've got decent airflow set up right out of the box. The one thing I didn't like was that they're connected to the built-in fan hub with these proprietary connectors, and that is how their lighting is controlled. However, they don't have your standard PWM or 3-pin fan connectors. Also, their speeds are fixed because of this, where the front 2 fans spin at 600 RPM and the rear fan spins at 1000 RPM. Now, since we're on the subject of fans, this case has plenty of configurations for additional fans for more airflow. At the bottom, you can mount up to three 120mm fans. On the front, you can add three 120s, two 140s, or two 200mm fans. On the side, there's room for three 120s or two 140mm fans. And on the top, you can add three 120s, three 140s, or two 200mm fans. And you'll see later on in the video, I definitely take advantage of this to maximize airflow. And this was a huge selling point for me because of the fact that you can add tons of fans in this thing. What's also really neat is that the top fan mount grill easily comes off, which makes it very easy to install fans or a radiator. Let's switch our focus to the other side. As I mentioned earlier, this is a dual chambered case, where on the other side you install the power supply, hard drives, and do all your cable management. And because there's so much space here, doing cable management was an absolute breeze. As someone who hates doing it and just sucks at it, this was very much appreciated. There are some people out there that I've seen do builds in smaller mid-towers who end up doing such clean cable management. Cable management really is a work of art. You can also see that there are plenty of cable management loops available, so regardless of how you route your cables, there will be a way for you to tidy them up. The hard drive cage is also located right behind the motherboard tray, and you will have to remove it if you're going to be installing a mounting bracket for something like an AIO. But thankfully, it does come off quite easily. In fact, the whole case does offer quite a lot of modularity in that regard. The hard drive cage can hold two hard drives, and the caddies easily slide in and out for easy installation, though they're not toolless. The side panel also has two mesh portions on it with magnetic dust filters, because as you guys saw, you can mount fans on the side there, so it provides a good amount of air to move in freely through the chassis. As for actually building inside the case, it was a pretty fun and easy process. I definitely took my time and carefully thought out how I was going to be doing cable management because, like I said, I wanted to take advantage of all those places where I could mount a fan, along with making it look nice, and due to this, there were a lot of cables and RGB cables everywhere. I also decided to upgrade my power supply. I'd been previously using an EVGA 750W G2, and it served me quite well. It's been through a few different builds, but I got a Corsair RM850X, just decided to go a little higher on the wattage as I'll eventually upgrade the GPU in this system, and we've seen how these modern high-end GPUs can be quite power hungry. This is a highly rated unit, it's 80 plus gold certified, OEM'd by CWT, who have a great platform, and it's fully modular, again making cable management very easy. I was also surprised to see that this unit was a bit smaller than my old 750 G2 from EVGA. At the bottom, I installed three Deepcool CF120 ARGB fans. These were migrated from my old case, and they're decent fans. They look great aesthetically, come with a RGB hub and built-in physical controller that can be powered directly off from the PSU from a SATA cable. In fact, even for my Thermaltake fans, which I installed at the top, front, and side, I used the built-in physical SATA controllers for the RGB, as I personally like dealing with that as opposed to a bloated RGB software, and I'm not going for some crazy or unique effects either, so it does the job just fine. These CF120s also move a decent amount of air, but I will say that once they go over 800 RPM, they can start to get kinda loud. I also ended up grabbing some Deepcool Pro ARGB LED strips, which hooked up straight into the RGB hub that came with the fans, which was great so I could easily sync them up with the fans and their lighting effects. So for the top mounted fans, I went with a triple pack of Thermaltake's Pure 14s. These are also ARGB, and what's nice about these is that they were able to daisy chain with my other Thermaltake RGB fans as well. So here you guys can see that I'm installing the fans on the top grill that was easily able to detach from the chassis, which made installing the fans really easy, and so I didn't have to lay the case on its side and work in an awkward position, especially considering how bulky and heavy it is. Once they were installed, they were simply placed in the appropriate position and secured with a couple of thumb screws. After that, I installed the motherboard and screwed it into the case. The standoffs for an ATX sized board already come pre-installed, so that was convenient. Now, because of how much room there is inside this case, just being able to install components, cables, and connectors was really straightforward. You could still easily see where everything is. I didn't feel like I was wasting time fiddling around with connectors because I couldn't exactly see what I was doing. Other than that, this is a pretty typical installation process of how you would go about installing your motherboard for any other build. Now, I want to shift the attention away from the case for a moment and talk about the Thermaltake TH360 liquid cooler. I decided since I ended up getting the white version of the View 51, I might as well switch my CPU cooler to one that complements the overall aesthetic, and this TH360 Snow Edition was on sale for a great deal, so it seemed like a no-brainer to me. In the box, you get some mounting hardware, the AIO unit itself, 3 white ARGB fans, and some various RGB cables if you want to hook this up to your motherboard's 5V or 12V headers. The unit itself looks very nice and clean, and there's just something different about white components that makes them stand out and look very premium. The radiator has a fairly standard size thickness, nothing too crazy here, and a lot of fins that you typically find on a radiator of this size. The tubes themselves are also white and braided, and Thermaltake claims that they have low evaporation tech built into them, which helps in decreasing the loss of coolant over time, but we'll see how that holds up. The water block itself has a pretty simple square-shaped design, with the corners chamfered off, and I like that because the View 51 also has those similar touches, and I think it complements it really well. The ring and logo also light up, but unfortunately there's no way to rotate it, and I actually had to mount the block upside down because the tubing wasn't long enough for a front mount. The block also has a pretty large copper cold plate, which should provide excellent coverage when mounted on top of our Ryzen 9 5900X. As for the fans, they do have addressable RGB, and they have the same RGB daisy chainable connectors, so I was able to connect them and the pump to my top mounted fans. In terms of specifications, they're rated for a max speed of up to 1500 RPM, 59 CFM of airflow, and a max static pressure of 1.31mm of H2O. So they're not the best, but they're decent enough where they should be able to provide good cooling performance, but we'll see how it goes once I show you guys my thermal results in this case. This is what the AIO unit looks like installed, and in my opinion, it looks absolutely fantastic. It definitely provides a much cleaner look than my old bulky NHD15. Also, I know someone in the comments is probably writing how the tube shouldn't be out the top. Please don't. Mounting the radiator like this is just fine. You're not going to damage or really hinder its cooling performance. As long as the pump isn't at the highest point in the loop, you're fine. Anyways, you guys can also see that the rest of the build has all been completed, and it came out really good looking, and looks very, very clean in my opinion. Now, one important thing I wanted to point out with this setup was that because both of my GPU and CPUs are cooled by 360 rads, I have them both mounted as intakes. So I have my CPU radiator mounted on the front drawing fresh air, and my GPU's radiator mounted on the side drawing fresh air from there. This was another huge selling point for me with this case, because typically what would happen is that whether you're mounting your CPU rad in the front, then all of that hot air is going to be dissipated towards your GPU, making it run warmer, and then if you have your CPU rad mounted on the top, well then all of that hot air that's being expelled from your GPU will make your CPU run warmer. Here that's not really going to be the case, as both of them will be drawing in fresh cooler air from the outside. So here's the other side of the case. Tons of cables everywhere. But like I said, because there's a whole other chamber, it made working with them very easy. I also have the GPU radiator fans mounted on this side. Unfortunately, they were interfering with my CPU's radiator, so I had to mount them on this side. It may not look the best, but at least this way I am maximizing cooling performance. Also, what I liked was that this case also has a secret compartment on the top where you can hide more cables, and this is where I routed all my fan and RGB cables. Before I show you guys what the build looks like powered on, I wanted to first go over data I attained from some thermal testing. So what I did was that I torture tested my PC and put it under an extremely heavy load by running Prime 95 small FFTs and Firmark at the same time for about an hour, and recorded the temps with hardware info. I took the note of the temperature logs of some important components in the system, which should give you guys an idea of how well it does during this sort of heavy workload, and what the temps are like. Here we can see that overall the system does very well with respect to thermals seen here. During our test, we can see that the CPU averaged 69 degrees Celsius and peaked at 71, which is totally fine. Remember, this is a 12-core part, so there's undoubtedly going to be a considerable amount of heat. Taking a deeper look at the temps of the individual cores on this temperature over time graph allows us to see that all the cores were hanging around between 60 to 70 degrees Celsius. Most of the cores on CCD1 ran hotter than the cores from CCD2, as that is the better quality chip, which seems to draw more power. Now, one trade-off you have to deal with when going from a tower style air cooler to an AIO with just a water block on the CPU is that you often don't get any direct VRM cooling because there aren't any fans nearby. But here we can see that the VRMs did absolutely fine under this heavy workload, averaging 58 degrees Celsius and peaking at just 63. The chipset also did just fine at 49 degrees Celsius, and I didn't hear the chipset fan come on, which is great because that tiny little fan can get kind of annoying. And our memory DIMM temps were also hovering around in the low 40s. Again, this is great because this is Samsung BDI, and I needed need it to stay absolutely cool in order to ensure stability. Another important component in your system can be an NVMe drive. I actually recently made a video showing how I had to add a NVMe heatsink to keep my drive cool because it was giving me problems due to overheating, so it's crucial you keep your temps in check here. In regards to that, we don't have anything to be worried about here as our drive was operating with temps around 53 degrees Celsius. Last but not least, we have our GPU, and here we can see that the 2080 stays nice and cool under just 50 degrees Celsius for the average GPU core temps. Looking at our temperature over time graph shows us it tops out at just under 50 degrees Celsius and doesn't seem to go beyond that, while our hotspot temps show us a delta of around 10 degrees Celsius. Overall, the entire system and main components run decently under such an extreme load. You have to remember that Prime 95 and FurMark are very stressful on the CPU and GPU respectively, and under a gaming workload, we're not going to necessarily see these same kinds of figures. So in my experience with the Thermaltake View 51 and the TH360 AIO, the experience has been a positive one. This case not only delivers in the aesthetics department, but it also does well with respect to thermals. In regards to noise, there is definitely a bit of a hum coming from the case, and you have to remember there are 15 fans installed, so there's going to be noise. With that said though, I don't necessarily hear it when I'm gaming with headphones on, and I've just set all the fans to 50%. I don't mind noise, but what I do absolutely hate is the sound of fans ramping up and down. I've just set them all to a constant speed, so I don't have to deal with that. Now finally, I wanted to show you guys how the completed build looks powered on. With tons of fans and the addition of 2 ARGB LED strips, it's an absolute light show in here. It pretty much looks like a unicorn came and just barfed all over the PC. Jokes aside, I am really happy with how this build has turned out. All the components look absolutely stunning, and I am glad I decided to go for the Thermaltake TH360 Snow Edition AIO, as it does stand out in a fantastic way. Now the advantage of having an RGB build like this is that you don't necessarily need to leave it on this rainbow themed setup. Since there's a wide variety of colors you can choose from, you can choose to customize it however you want. I always wanted a blue and white build, and now I can finally attain that. By turning all the fans and LED strips to this cool blue color, I think I'm going to leave the PC setup like this for a while now. It looks absolutely fantastic. The blue color really complements the white version of the View 51. And hey, if I get bored of it, I can always just change it to something else. All in all, I am quite pleased with how the transfer of my build turned out in the Thermaltake View 51. I think the case is a great upgrade over my Era 740, especially in the aesthetics department. It's got a more updated I/O, the color really stands out, there's plenty of options for cooling fans, and cable management was super easy to do. Upgrading to any other components in the future should be very doable. It does very well in regards to thermals, and adding in the Thermaltake TH360 Snow Edition AIO liquid cooler really helped to make this build stand out and complements the rest of the case. Overall, the experience has been great, and if you're interested in building a system like this for yourself, and you want to use the Thermaltake View 51 or the TH360 AIO, I'll leave some links to the parts down in the video description, so definitely check them out. I hope you guys found this video to be informative and helpful. Let me know your thoughts down below. Check out the video description on ways to support the channel and for my other videos. If you guys are interested in more content like this, then make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.